All right, cool.
I'm good.
Good, cool. You should think of homo as a unique style of alienation that serves as a precondition for all capitalist accumulation. Housing is a universal human practice that has been taken hostage by household markets in the concept of eviction. Marxism and 1. Alienation is a precondition for all private property, whether it be dual economy. Housing is a universal human practice. So we have residual alienation. What happens when capitalist class captures the housing price exclusively for its own ends? Housing is an instrument for someone else suppressing the confront the life, the social power. We want to draw from alienation. Social bonds enabling the curve when activity central to humanity subject to exploitation. Has housing system leaves many feel absolutely devastated. The people who want to make up housing a unsettled place, they reshape and demonstrate their affections, a traumatizing experience. Radical risk experienced by homeowners under threat of foreclosure is physically and psychologically destabilizing, and the capitalist mode of production makes the housing crisis inevitable. Multiple sources of pressure and structure of accumulation means that elites will always extract as much profit out of our marriage used in manner too. First factor, deregulation throughout the U.S. has been a study trend where you can regulate regulation, practical practices, and community unequally destroy the welfare of the back in the junior households because regulatory had been removed and the president social order of privatization constitutes the largest trend for property rights and history. The second is housing has been ongoing financialization, increasing power of the firms that engage in profit accumulation. Markets have been turning solid structures into liquids rather than increasing wealth, and markets facilitate global investment. The real estate ecosystem being colonized by large-scale corporate finance. Finally, commodification reinforced by globalization of housing. Housing markets are actually more responsive to signals than local ones at that distance. Usage limits pay barely registers, and housing is a political question. State intervention is inevitable. This debate is a question of what that state intervention looks like. Marxism and 3. For belief in the middle of the regulated market will produce the best outcomes. That state has been interfering with the housing has been doing so by lowering the cost of the home ownership by people who can already afford it. Housing has been dependent on equally tied by state action. Cost for state action to get housing markets are incoherent. Question will be always how the state should act towards housing. State is not a neutral organization nor is a fully united nor coherent one, but indifferent has. State could be a real vehicle for housing alternatives. State action can be used to democratize and redistribute housing, or it can be functioning in purge of inequality and support private profit making. And the act defends the existence of a social right to housing. This rights-based approach recognizes the existence of collective responsibility without grounding our duties to one another inside conceptions of citizenship. 14. Rights are ideological construction. We are dealing with abstract ideas rather than concrete reality. Social rights are given expression to the effects of social isolation as an exercise of state power. Have been concerned with the extent to which rights are initially founded with the settled form of censorship. It is difficult, however, to reconcile this view with the realities of contemporary welfare. State society social rights are bestowed by the collective authority of the state. They are defined with reference to obligation of the with the administration who those who benefit. Social rights are not static. They change over time, and under regulation is a disaster that's going to happen. Intervention that housing historically has worked and has been minimally disrupted. Be skeptical of their market logic and gear up to bet against the status quo. MacArthur and elements of the argue that federal housing policy causes the financial crisis could promote dramatically, but never the federal housing administration change the government sponsor enterprises. They conservative arguments between skepticism and the use of our targets of conservative did not play a significant role in the housing financial crisis with the lack of sufficient government oversight. Key areas including consumer protection, market securitization, capitalization, and financial markets that transform housing bubble to a global financial crisis. Support for markets that help increase home ownership from the nation's home ownership increased from 44% to 62%. FHA and VA to the 1960 government policy helped to maintain higher ownership than federal mortgages and retail support. Mortgage loans are also available during tough economic times when the market such as and dissolved. The United States ought to guarantee the right to housing. Our analysis centers on decommodification. Housing inequities result from contingent structures which can be changed. Marxism matter for the searching deterrent housing delinquent are community products for those who merely want to live in commodity that people state can use to state action where the logical commodification will be enforced on ability to not a market value. They also how the market works. This unavoidable contradiction solution not models must create some alternative versions until decommodification models must be created, but our understanding requires a total account of its commodification. Real practice requires developing alternatives, and thus the role of the best. I endorse the debate that best proposes a spatial challenge to that of alienation. Chapter 10, Crusade 20. Post-capitalist practice need to be alive in autonomous, radical, social activeness, local community, and diversity economies, and intervention by state balance between vertical break the symbiotic means of work with existing institutions activity that break we need to be a further exploration the form and function of common some aspects may be an area of politics post-capitalist social and spatial formation inhibit the accumulation of surplus value to screen relatively local cultures of activity diffuse and non-confusion. Post-capitalist bureaucracy will have actively single politics that reflect occupiers of common experience working in the potential of post-capitalist requires different spatial literacy, key spatial challenges the relationship between the state and political methods of activities, and the plan designates responsibility where due state involvement is the key corrective for decades of iniquity due to special racialization. After the plan of bonds is inevitable. The answer in Reynolds 20. Housing policy and reparations, I elucidate ways in which housing policy are fundamentally reconfigured with the nature of how the black people have been as racialized subjects going for the global process of racial justice is the intervention of deconstructing racial capitalism. Housing market must be returned to social potential. The state has a significant role in the matter of state charges, point of endless responsibility for other states as states should be stated and public and process its many access to local risk and capital is crucial for communities to weather the economic downturn. The government must establish equitable structure of accountability and account for these iniquities. Right to housing is a transformative action which can shift us away also from charity towards social justice, working to change and housing paradigm from a market-oriented approach. It should be established as well as a housing provider, prevention to increase and to address the systemic black racism changes must be provide for social stability requires a rehabilitation, corrective exploitation of black bodies, a reason for colonial on the displays or frames flaming portions of walls gave have rest after the long day of navigating a white world, and white spatial imaginaries have overcome the politics of American housing. The right to housing challenges that organizing paradigm and changes the racialization nature of economic opportunity. Limits 7. Race key variable in determining the ability to own one's house enables white families to pass benefits to schools and provide white village but understand that differential space can have and with racial space and spatialization of race. The idea of specifically racially specific imaginaries is not the theory but rather for a country that has actual societal relationships that aim is not just between the experience of aggregation to sweeping generalizations. Theories must claim universal applicability, elevate one historical specificity and dominance particular over others by which white spatial imaginary functions as central mechanisms skewing opportunities and life changes and that the United States will follow on visual lights at the same time. The combined communities have developed a spatial counter imaginary based on social ability for public center for public needs and changing the racialization of opportunities and introduce the rejected white spatial imaginary constitute a new social charter that lies embodying the base of black spatial imaginary frontal attack of the mechanism to prevent people of color from opportunities and embrace that spatial imaginary based on privilege using values to overchange value and moral geography of colonies required to conquest to producing groups like association freedom with purity lives out space and frontier as well as new racial zoning restricted covenants and mortgages right lining blockbusting and searing white spatial imaginary reason primarily generation of exchange value and accusational titles of activism by hacking activism even the most of what allows like experts to be the homosexual overstar was powerless and cut the card at powerless and the Wednesday rhetorical commitment is absolutely relevant static co-representations of financial responsibilities uniqueness for the affirmative Anarchism and 5. Expose proposed blue such as simply to open up scrutiny concepts of housing determinants more the form of the substance process needs to be done to change to create right to housing epistemological basis needs to be democracy and nothing without us activists have something consent politics of housing knowledge and integration by project documenting and interpretation of Oakley Allen and to combat future long efforts at creation like affordable housing part of the process by which inequalities are normalized language needs to be repoliticized by start by refusing euphemism and moving unite in order to address the problem at the global scale talk about television should be leveraged. Cut the card out leverage. I did not get the last card. Is everyone, are you good?
Yeah.
For context? Cool.
Yeah. What's the world of the app look like?
The world of the app looks like, hold on, the world of the affirmative looks like a legally codified statute within law. We say that the right to housing is a good thing. It allows people from the bottom up to challenge corporations and corporate interests within the housing market.
In what way do you provide housing? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, there's multiple ways that would include, i.e. removing things like zoning laws, which would cause things like segregation, unequal opportunity. Second is protection from evictions. Third is you allow people to sue corporations, etc. for evictions. Fourth is that you can remove things like predatory loaning practices. You can have protection against infringement of rights.
Okay, but what does that actually do to like provide people with housing? I.e.,
I just said like 5 things. That's the reasons why the current status quo, the way that housing is commodified, is deemed as capital.
Hold on. The answer that you gave me like kind of comes off as how you're going to, I guess, kind of like protect people once they have said housing. I'm asking how you were giving the housing specifically.
Well, I think there's also notions of things like, i.e., the government can, for instance, our argument would be positing that there are a lot of houses already. Right now, a lot of them are bought out by, i.e., banks in order to try to loan them out or try to like rent them out for predatory loaning practices. Our argument is a lot of these houses already exist, which means that first of all, it could be a form of redistribution. But second of all, we can also say like affordable housing, public housing. We would reconceptualize of that and establish the right to housing.
And then I guess
so we have specific concrete goals of how we do that. Decommodification, our argument within the status quo is we have described the status quo as one where capital is, or housing is viewed as capital, i.e. money for money's sake, in order to try to flip the markets. Our argument is literally incentivizes banks to buy out housing in order to try to loan them out, rent them out, etc., or try to flip the market, etc., which is something that's first fundamentally unsustainable, economically unsustainable, but second, it also causes racialized.
I'm asking how you specifically decommodify housing, because the answers that you've given in Cross so far have been like, oh, you can like sue your landlord, and we still have public housing. So I'm asking how specifically the affirmative changes the views of like.
Our argument is we are epistemological, but also material orientation against things like commodification, i.e. commodification happens because corporations are able to. Just let me finish this.
Okay.
Corporations are able to just run free within the current housing market, do predatory loan practices, things like price gauging, monopolization. Our argument is we remove that.
Okay, so if the affirmative's not a complete rejection of capitalism and is still working within the state, how do you?
What do you mean? Okay, first of all, what is your definition of capitalism? Let's start there.
I guess kind of the things that the affirmative is talking about, like capitalist accumulation and the ways in which we view housing is like, I don't know why you're asking me questions. Anyways. I'm just trying to get on the same ground here. Can we define capitalism, i.e. capital is distinct from like money or ownership, i.e. capital is money for money's sake, i.e. trying to flip more profits. Our argument that commodification within the housing market is something that's specifically bad. The right to housing would reverse that. Okay. That's fine. And then also, I guess kind of just like, sorry, that like laughing got me, like I'm just no longer focused. Oh, okay, I guess kind of like, on the roll of the ballot, what is spatial challenge?
A spatial challenge refers to alienation. Our argument is that housing right now acts as a unique side of alienation because when housing is commodified, people are able to be forced evicted, which literally severs them from either community and sense of person, etc. We think that housing can provide ontological security.
Cool.
Alright. Awesome. We're doing 5 minutes of prep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember prep starting now.
Cool.
Okay. Cease prep. Setting up the. It has to. This is so dry.
What is?
Huh?
Is it really cold in here?
A little bit. But also, the Wi-Fi is just.
The
Wi-Fi is not too great.
And also, like, my hotspot, like, I got a, like, notification that was like, you're no longer on the high-speed hotspot, and now it's, like, way lower. Okay, it's uploading, but I'm waiting to send it. Okay, it's sent. The order is 3, or is, yeah, wait, hold on, my bad, it's 2 off. Wait, no, it's 3 off. Sorry, I was right the first time.
Let me get this document. Sorry, the Wi-Fi's being really slow, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm low-key struggling with that.
I'm ready when you get off.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Yeah, just give me a second. It's still not looking.
You good?
I'm still
Yeah, you're good.
Alright, there we go.
We're good? Alright. Interpretation of debaters beside at least 2 Black HR authors who identify as a woman or gender minority in the 1AC violation they don't standards on critical education getting including scholarship for Black women, which is excluded from the debate space. Black women knowledge production is key to coming up with a knowledge that critically interrogates the university debate, but she can say anything anti-normative outside the realm, making debate meaningless to argument reciprocity. Black women are forced to speak the grammar of white men and serve Black men. The app should be burdened with flipping now. When debating Black women, especially through diversification, allows us to increase the amount of Black academia within the debate space, allows us to increase discussions about Black women in relation to debate and voters want Black education. Remember this model because it increases the amount of Black academics which is that benefit of the debate space, and 2, accessibility creates a space for Black girls to interact with literature that advocates for them. A, representation, having more Black women's perspectives and increases Black girls' participation in debate, which is key to having a more diverse and safe debate space. Paradigm issues 1, prefer competing interests, reasonability encourages hacking against Black debaters, and 2, no RBIs or wars, non-Blacks and punishes Black debaters for trying to navigate anti-Blackness implication. Drop the debater if we with a shell means drop the debater, no drop the argument, because the problem is you're literally not making one onto the counterplay. Counterplan Black anarchism to guarantee housing solves the whole app. Bay 20 anarchism tear down, smashing, no control, and transgressing oppression. Anarcho-blackness refusal to stateless encounters, which includes binary and imposed ontologies. The changing and expanding Black radical politics provides opportunities to contradict and undermine hegemonic forces. No shortage of liberation of we will ourselves towards anarchism that demands justice and liberation for the most marginalized, the Black, and the trans disruption. A political opportunity to explore anarchic possibilities. The anarchism bears affinities to Black to unite the people behind anti-racist movements, combination revolutionary and radical reformism to ensure democratic rights are necessary, solidarity, fight racism in society, democratic and human rights for non-white peoples, money for rebuilding the cities, creation of public work brigades to rebuild city areas, full health and medical care, fight economic disparity, and no, for real, we solve all of the Urban 21, refusal to pay slumlords and exploitative banks, just take over housing, money go into repairing dwelling homeless, poor persons needed affordable housing, and others who need housing should just take over any abandoned housing owned by city. Good tactic in times of shortages. We will have to fight cops and landlords, but we can do that onto the pit. The United States ought to provide guaranteed housing. The counterplan solves the case but avoids the critique of right. Having guaranteed housing is more protectionist of housing, i.e. more people actually become housed. Show Field 22. A guaranteed seat is a basic requirement. Lacking guaranteed place affects ability to participate in workforce education of treatment. The focus on distributive fairness of those who are unhoused, denied status of participants, reciprocity is a moral ideal in society, but withhold benefits owed to individuals by virtue of their being members, exclude individuals from participating as members. It is to be excluded from the opportunity to do the things and to take on the responsibilities that count as participation in the first place. Wrong done to the persons who are homeless is not simply economic injustice, it is an under-democratic and illiberal exclusion. Those guaranteed housing are likely to maintain stable residents, participate in treatment without experiencing an increase in abuse at economic level. Homelessness with housing saves money, less than reliance on social services, and rights discourse falls apart at a structural level and is corrupted by the state. Calls from the app for the right to housing follow these desires and are rooted in relieving systemic inequalities. ELOF 16. Human rights discourses of little use if we see concrete change when movements desire the right to housing. Whatever mobilization might result, give up politics in favor of the political. If, however, they follow this by stating that, or we will take housing, then they are suggesting that politics is a possibility of taking place. Whatever small victories may be won through the language of rights and demands, rights discourse cannot withstand structural. We must begin to look elsewhere if we wish to transform social relations. The problem is unchecked globalization of capital combining disenfranchised peoples with their rights we have sold out to the material world and effectuated by a hegemonic state form, and expanding rights completes and weakens protections and does not provide a total solution. Adams 09. Right takes focus away from compassion. Right to housing is second best approach. Creating right lead to resentment. Place focus on wrong social priorities. Recognizing new rights not necessary to protect low-income persons. Rights not helpful in advancing the goal of distributive justice and multiplying rights. Society recognizes cause rights to lose force. Rights cannot present a full, strong picture of how society is to be run. It is important not to assume that creating new rights can present a solution to the problem facing society. On to case. The very theory of government guaranteed right to housing is founded on concepts of racial exclusion. Front 13. Patterns of residential development have been driven by powerful institutions that have shaped metropolitan landscapes and created opportunity for some while systemically denying it to others. White flight from racially integrated neighborhoods, which they also call population sorting, and institutional barriers constructed by whites, discrimination by racist integral to design of American cities and suburbs. Discrimination was sanctioned and aggressively promoted by neighborhood associations. Together, they helped to draw sharp neighborhood boundaries to produce obscene disparities in wealth, opportunity, and the basic quality of life, and turn public housing as a mechanism for racial segregation that disproportionately affects minorities and traps them in cycles of poverty. Bickford and Massey 91. Level of segregation is maintained at a high level within public housing stock. The households are most likely to reside in centralized high-density structures owned and operated by local authorities, while white households are most likely to be found in low-density scattered site projects that are developed around the large cities. Public housing segregation is almost universal predicator of segregation in U.S. Public housing is the rate of black population growth. Segregation was by race was maximized when high rate of black population growth combined with a slow rate of white population growth. Poor blacks in most metropolitan areas have been isolated within a segment of the public housing stock that places them under local government supervision. Public housing imposes an additional element of class isolation to the supplement of the high degree of racial isolation that black families normally experience in U.S. cities. Exposure to concentrated poverty systemically undermines life changes of blacks by creating a social environment lacking the institutions of rules, norms, and values conducive to success in larger society. Public housing programs provide a mechanism not only for racial segregation of blacks, but for the class isolation as well. And government agencies can ensure the safety of their own housing facilities. It's more profitable not to, and residents end up in more dangerous conditions. Learn in Caputo 21. More than 9,000 federally subsidized properties within hundreds of apartments or townhouses sit within a mile of Superfund sites in 486 and 49 states and territories. Thousands lives in places dangerous to their health, contaminated land with lead and other toxins. Residents are left in a bureaucratic gap between governmental agencies that lack the authority or resources to address the problem. EPA and state environmental agencies struggle to clean up Superfund sites and can affirm that they contain the threat to human health. It's rare for HUD to analyze the health risks or relocate people from hazardous housing developments despite its own regulations requiring the agency to provide tenants with safe and healthy place to live. And skip this card actually. Onto app can't solve one capacity. The government doesn't have the tools to implement the app effectively. Shoots 21. Proposal for government to build housing are vague, operated by 3,300 local authorities. Most don't have experience in new construction agencies, operate under rigid rules and process that labor requires more difficult and more expensive, and government-led to property management and rife with incompetency. 19 public dream continues the belief that public ownership by foregoing profits will provide better values. Money democracy tend to avoid responsibility. There are obstacles to accomplishment of orders. That's fine. I'll just stop there.
Alright, cool.
Everything below 2.
Empirics.
Yeah.
Just delete.
Mm-hmm. You're good. I'm doing the same.
Alright, cool. Alright, I delete them. Are you good for context now?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. On the counterplan, explain how black anarchism guarantees housing.
Cool. So black anarchism is like in itself, I guess, kind of like breaking down the state and like complete rejection against it. I.e., we're saying that the state is always going to be oppressive. We want to reject
What's your
this.
empirical analysis that the state will always be oppressive? Are you making an ontological claim?
No, we're not making an ontological claim, but we're looking at the histories of housing and the ways in which it is always conformed to some kind of anti-blackness, which
So,
on the case page we provide evidence for, which is enough of a justification for the counterplan.
Alright, cool. For your counterplan, are you saying like people like Marcia Alfudge, who's a black woman currently working for the Housing Urban Development, are you saying that she can't work anymore?
No, I'm not
Sorry,
saying
Colin.
she can't work anymore. For example, the counterplan actually provides ways in which we are kind of like replacing these like kind of systems, i.e. we like form new councils and that kind of thing, which provides a,
Also,
like
we can
new
form
place
new
for
councils
people
within
to
the
work.
government.
No,
Challenge the government.
No, it's not the current state.
So
is
what do
we're
people?
saying.
So current black people trying to work for the right to housing. Do you say they can't work for the right to housing anymore?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the like public housing system under the state is bad. I'm not going to say that them making their money so that they can provide for their families
No,
is
I'm
bad, but
saying
I'm
people
saying
who are
that the
working for
system that
social
they
rights,
work
for
for
the
is
social
bad.
right to housing. Do you say within the counterplan that they can no longer work for them and that they are now the enemy?
Well, they're not the enemy, but the state's no longer going to exist. So I guess the way in which you're asking that question, yes,
How do you,
that job is
defeat
no longer
the-
going to exist, but there are going to be
How does
other
black
ways in which
black
they can work.
anarchism overthrow like the entire U.S. military?
Cool. Why does that matter?
Because otherwise the U.S. will literally like come for everyone in black anarchism.
Not
How do you overcome
necessarily.
that?
I mean, for example, if like you're talking about the people who are working within, I guess like black people working within the state, there are some ways in which, I mean, not only acting as spies to kind of de-shackle the state from like within, but also just like a full-on revolution, i.e. it's not just like only black people revolting, but it's just like the general rejection upon the state.
Okay. Next on to your pick, you say you don't endorse the right to housing, but you just endorse. What do you endorse then?
We guarantee housing.
You just guarantee.
As in, we give people housing, but we aren't like, I guess kind of like engaging within the rights discourse.
Do you do public housing still?
It wouldn't be like the, I guess kind of like
How do you
that's, like,
guarantee
public
housing without the right to housing?
You'd be like, okay, so what we're saying is that specific like discourse, i.e. the use of the term right, inherently like.
No, I
that's kind of,
understand
like,
that. My question is, how do you guarantee
pairs it
housing
with the
without the right
state.
to housing?
We just like give people houses.
Who gives the people houses? The United States ought to
It
provide.
doesn't matter
guaranteed
if it's
houses.
the like.
So it doesn't matter all of a sudden now that it's on you.
No, I'm trying to like answer your question.
answer.
I'm saying that in itself, we're saying that like rights discourse is what's going to make like the, like I guess kind of movements like the affirmative fail. We're saying just by guaranteeing housing, it kind of avoids that kind of like logic because like rights discourse in itself is not I guess kind of like sufficient. So we're saying if we just like pass plans that guarantee housing, then that means that we're
Yeah, my question
actually
is, who does that and how does that get actualized?
the state.
The state, okay. So, 5 minutes of step starting now. Alright, cool. I'll stop at 3 minutes. It's just gonna be like 4 cards. We're re-highlighting a few cards. I'll put them inside. It's just gonna be AF, the line by line, then just top down. For the off case. Cool. It should all be sent now. Let me know when you're good. Whenever he gets it.
I just have to down.
Cool.
Sorry, what's the order again?
Case, top down on the case page. It's then gonna be like the role of the ballot argument after the line by line on the case page. Then just top down, cite black women, the counterpoint black anarchism, then the peg for the rights peg. Cool. Alright, that's pretty good. Good, Ethan.
The home is essential of the consumption of the self, access to its media by capital. It's either you make rent or you're out. The threat of eviction is a kind of coercive violence that forces workers into compliance and prevents movability. That's what is accused evidence. They completely concede the thesis claim of the 1AC housing is inherently political zoning district, property disputes, tenant courts. The government is inevitably involved in meeting access to the right to housing, which means that 1AC is a material correction that focuses on community rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, which includes material corrections like increasing power to sue corporate interests, protection from evictions, removing zoning laws, but perpetuate inequalities within the status quo currently, etc. The state is the number which is conceded. A claim comes from accused evidence because the state will always engage you, i.e. the state cooperating different types of movements without infiltrating in the state, which means that only the 1AC can specifically solve, another counterplans or PICs can specifically solve because they do not engage the state. The framing issue is that housing is not just about housing, but it is intertwined with the sense of self and ontological security, i.e. your ability to get education, water, food services are all predicated on that housing. Now the line by that argument, therefore, evidence is simply not about the right to housing, it's about white flight and city discrimination. We reduce discrimination because we provide the right to housing to prevent things like evictions. The brick for evidence is simply not offense. Our accused by evidence specifically says that the right to housing is distinct from just public housing or affordable housing trust. It is an attempt to rethink the foundation of how we think about how housing is currently commodified now, which we attack things with things like decommodification. The lender evidence about federal property right to housing means black people get to access their own housing, whereas neoliberal corporations and status quo currently push them out, which we are challenged to. Their immense evidence is simply about things like Marxism in the abstract, but our argument, we are not just Marxism, we are a form of racial capitalism. Literally look at the entirety of 1AC. We specifically examine the ways in which capital and alienation are uniquely affect black people. They say that the no solvency affirmative, they say capacity. The truth evidence simply just is not about the right to housing, it's simply about the public housing in general. Our argument, we are more than just public housing, we are also about things like, i.e. things like preventing things like evictions and giving more people for bottom-up approaches. They say, which takes out all their AFCAP self often. The hosting evidence was simply just simply just cut really poorly. It just talks about how public housing, etc. That still falls the same type of argument. They say empirics and statistics, etc. These are about other types of countries, etc., but not about the United States, which has more resources than some of these other countries. Now, I'll extend the role about here. Alienation is the precondition for all other forms of violence, which means that the role of violence is to best endorse debater that best spatially challenges alienation or reduces the collective. Alienation reduces the collective to irreducible parts and produces violence by symbolic opinions certain groups as illegitimate recipients of violence. They conceded this claim, which should frame the debate on the rest of the off case. Now, the side black women. Counter-interpretation of the affirmative must defend the right to leasing. That's the least arbitrary statement point. First, the count first as a tokenization. The mandate of their interpretation is not content-specific, which proves that they care more about representational diversity than actual inclusion, which turns all their diversity and critical education arguments turns academic contributions of black women to get out of free race and cards and encourages debaters to read black women without actually meaningful context or integration, etc., which means that etc. Second is that insofar as the way that right housing is good for black people, etc., it's a reason why you should obviously not vote for it. So you should use reasonability instead, because anything else only causes things of substance crowd out. It means we actually don't debate about the material substantive issues about the right to housing. There is an injury where you guys allow for interrupt to be made and cite any specific race which is infinitely regressive, because I can always cite someone more genuine about the right to housing, which turns all their arguments about diversity, because they'll always be tokenized down to the counterplay. Permutation do both allows us to co-opt the state via permutation do both allows us to co-opt the state via bottom-up approaches, the movements against the state via black radicalism, and I'm going to cross-apply all this stuff about state inevitability stuff here. Even if they win that police kill black people in houses, housing still provide the fighting chance to get anti-blackness through adding extra walls of protection that allow black people to make decisions in their homes and make radical demands on the state. Third is Lincoln, the way to lead to black sovereignty. One must have access to home and land in order to begin to produce the world that's free of the status quo, and anti-black which requires and necessitates engaging down the state. This is the mindset of dominant Walker, Serene, Korean, and black activists in the Moms for Housing movement in Oakland. Avoid the reformist thinking by saying that everything within the housing market about commodification must go. Independently housing also private ontological security. I'll make this as an analytic. That's a prerequisite for black radical movement building. The forefront is right via the right to housing is robustly testing meets the demand of black movement down to the right to pay for no sovereignty. The right to housing is the legal term absent explanation. The one is you reject their argument because it's not solved, since it literally cannot implement the right to housing. It's very embarrassing and crossing when they cannot point out, i.e. how do we engage the state, etc. Second is linked to all the criticism of rights because they still rely on the state, i.e. if they are right that rights are bad because they rely on the state, then they're also still rely on the state, etc. Which means that they simply cannot solve any of the right offense. Second is competition due to the counterplay is not function competitive. I want to mean that the low counterplay must compete by function, and tax competition collapses into functional competition because it steals its quality about the debate. Third is competition do both that solves the best because we have to engage that of the state. Fourth is the right to housing is third is the right to housing is a strictly legal term and unique form of other rights that unites emancipatory struggles against structures Marquis Amendment 16. Right to be emancipatory, right to housing can challenge current housing system would be unenforceable universal rights, not minority rights can be done taught the way that makes it possible point towards other ways to change in the absence of rights of behind the scenes debate to politics and political and economic vicissitudes. Cut the card of vicissitudes for the Marquis card. I did not get these other cards.
Let me start my time.
Yeah, sure. I'll start the timer.
Okay, I'll start my time. the counterplan, and then kids.
Which content?
Oh, the black anarchism.
Cool.
Black anarchism.
Is everybody actually? There is one card. I'll just send that now.
Cool.
Okay. It's sending. Oh, high five. Okay, it's sent.
Cool. Just one card, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Is everyone ready?
I don't think I got that.
Yeah, I'm still D.
Oh,
That's fine.
I just got
Okay, cool. Let's go.
Everyone's good.
Yep.
We're extending the counterplan and we're winning a 100% risk of solvency. The only actual answers that the affirmative has is that there's not really any kind of explanation as to how I guess counterplan doesn't have any kind of solvency, but just hedge against any kind of new to AR explanations, i.e. in Cross when they were saying that the U.S. military is gonna come and knock down on our doors or just fight against the movement. Our evidence literally talks about this and says that the state rejection weakened, or the state trying to break down our movement, we literally win that battle, i.e. they haven't responded to this, meaning that we're winning 100% risk of solvency, and we can win the movement, and we will win the movement, i.e. we are completely rejecting the state and just building up a new and better system, i.e. we create we're getting rid of general anti-blackness within society, i.e. We literally get rid of things such as racist cops and provide new counsels as to how we can go about the quote-unquote corona justice and the ways in which we're protecting society, and we also just provide housing by literally taking it over, which means that we're actually doing the affirmative but better, i.e. they say that we need to they talk about the banks, for example, and ways in which that the banks are inherently capitalism. We need to decommodify the ways in which we go about this, but the counterplan does this yet better, i.e. we say that we are literally taking houses from the banks, and we are just rejecting the ways in which the banks are trying to exploit us. We reject this, meaning that there's just a general better solvency, and it's just better than the affirmative, which is sketchy quote-unquote decommodification, which just uses the tools of the state. We say we destroy the state and its counterparts, which means that you should reject the permutation as it's an act of severance, i.e. perm to both means that they reject the state and capitalists as a whole, meaning they sever out of most of the AC. The 1AC is riddled with usage of the state. We say this is bad, i.e. methods of housing are always anti-black and oppressive, meaning that you should reject the perm, again, except that it's an act of severance, which should be rejected because it means that they're not actually burdened with defending the actual text of the 1AC. And then also in response to the AF as a fighting chance, what does that even mean? It's literally ignoring all of the evidence that we've read, saying that the ways in which the affirmative structures itself just as recreation of harmful housing politics and projects, i.e. we're saying that these should be rejected as they have always been anti-black. They don't provide any counter evidence or counter explanation as to how they're either going to change that or how it's not anti-black, meaning that the argument that the affirmative is a quote-unquote fighting chance in itself is just a shoddy try and explanation get you to vote out, but doesn't actually have any word or provide any kind of explanation. They also say that there's a link turn between the home and the lamp, but there's no actual this argument itself. There's no actual link turn. I.e. if we look back to the evidence of the actual counterplan itself, we're not using concepts such as the landlord, meaning that we reject these statist ideals and these capitalist ideals, meaning that there's no actual link turn with this argument. They also try and use the moms for housing, but moms for housing itself is a non-statist method, i.e. they are actually actively rejecting the state by squatting, meaning that this argument doesn't flow off. If anything, it just flows for us. It is an example of how we can use black anarchism and reject the state to actually provide real methods of housing. They also make this prerequisite argument, but it's not only unwarranted, but doesn't actually provide any explanation. We could just extend all of the all of the evidence, or all of our evidence that talks about ways in which capitalism is structured and how it's inherently oppressive, and we must reject it. Meaning that I'll just read the card now. Multiple historical examples prove solvency. William curriculated, rejuvenate radical ideals. Action is possible. Direct action allows people to learn intricacies of domination with institution, collective struggle, take countless forms. Articulated self-defense, dual power, criticism, self-criticism, and solidarity. Food, not bombs, anti-racist action, anarchist people of color, and back focus on domination. If it all gains momentum, dual power has been reached the old ideally position to overtake less efficient and less just version, meaning that we're winning 100% on the risk of solvency, meaning that you should be voting on the counterplan so that we were no longer, I guess, kind of perpetuating the status ideals and the general oppression onto case. We're going to be extending the Bigford and Massey 91 evidence, which is that public housing in itself is just a mechanism for racial segregation and traps people in cycles of poverty. It means that the AF is just net worse for black people, i.e. they continue cycles of poverty, even if they say the AF increases protections post-housing, such as the fact that I can sue my landlord. That doesn't analyze how housing itself and the manifestations of the affirmative are inherently harmful, i.e. they get them and they said multiple times that they just one of the methods of the affirmative is public housing. They provide no actual explanation as to how the affirmative changes the current structures of public housing, which means that this argument, I guess, is kind of still viable. It just proves that the affirmative is just going to increase racial segregation and also extend HUSIC 19, which is the government-led property is just incompetent, which means that when they take the houses from the banks and from big corporations, the state will inevitably fail. I.e., when the affirmative got up multiple times and said we need to the state is inevitable, we need to keep using the state. But this piece of evidence in itself explains how the ways in which I guess the affirmative is positioned, or the way in which their method, or I guess functions, means that the government is always going to fail. I.e., they can't actually handle the tactics of the affirmative, which means that in itself it is bound to fail, and you should not be voting on it because there's no actual solvency. And then they also I guess on the actual capitalism evidence, they said the court itself talks about Marxism but not racial cap, and then also it's not about rights, it's about public housing, and none of these arguments prove the solvency, i.e. you're still creating public housing and still using the state, which is inherently anti-black and should be rejected.
Three are. I think 2 minutes or 3 minutes of prep.
I have it written down. You have 3 left.
3 left, cool. Thank you. Starting now. Alright, cool. Case plan.
Cool, I'm good.
Everyone good? Cool.
The top level judge instruction for this debate is I'm going to be going for the permutation against the counterplan. The two are to next explain how the counterplan solves when I make very delineated claims on how the state is neutral, which would completely concede a big mistake. Their own evidence just says that we will just fight the police and replace them with some sort of councils, but no idea of how we should specifically fiat it, i.e. what is black anarchism, which movements do we support, so anything seizes forms of policy to the right, etc., which reproduces things like anti-blackness, reproducing things like police, makes all their impacts inevitable, which means that only the permutation can solve because it gets our foot through the door to make our radical demands on their state, etc. This could not be a worse affirmative for them to read against because our affirmative is literally a challenge to status quo conception of how the state interacts with public housing. You should be the entirety of the 1AC. Again, if you simply just understand, now I'm going to go for the state inevitable claim. They completely concede our third Marquise evidence, which specifically says that if the state has been interfering with housing, i.e. in a bad sense, they have been doing so by lowering the cost of home ownership for people who can actually already afford it, i.e. housing is always been dependent upon the state, because if you do not engage the state will engage you, i.e. places like the Black Panther movement who did not engage the state got infiltrated by people like Richard Aoki, who were part of the FBI, who infiltrated the Black Panther Party and completely took it down, which means that only state action is specifically good, etc. I would just simply defend that state action is good insofar as they win that it justifies the permutation. Or Marquise evidence specifically said that the question is, i.e. the state is not a neutral organization, nor is it fully unified nor coherent one. They have not made an ontological thing, which should be the framing issue, which means that you should view this debate on the level of specific specificity, i.e. there are black people like Shireen Kareem literally working within the housing urban development, trying to get people the right to housing, etc., fighting for housing rights, etc. You throw all that away with your counterplan, which is a deficit to your counterplan, is the reason why you should prefer the state, i.e. the state can be a vehicle for a reveal of housing alternatives. Thus, the 1AC is a walking link chain of permutation to the counterplan because the 1AC specifically delineates our solvency mechanism by giving the right to housing, which is a legally codified statute, which specifically includes removing things like zoning laws, protection from eviction is a legally codified right, which led to bottom-up movements like the Moms for Housing Challenge. The state, the line by line argument, they say suing does absolutely nothing. Our argument is not just about suing. Our argument is literally a codified right, i.e. to the social right to housing. The state now has an obligation to protect the right to housing and afford that affordable housing, which means it's not just only a question of the state, but independently of this, even if you find some deficit to the case page, our permutation solves all of them, i.e. any residual links they win to reason why state are bad. It's a reason why the permutation is uniquely good. You should not view all of their deficits to the affirmative just as to the affirmative in the abstract, but rather to the specific context of the permutation that we can combine state action with that of black anarchism through bottom-up movement building. They say we're only about capitalism. We're not about capitalism. We're literally about not just about capitalism, but specifically racialized capitalism. You should be the one you see again. It specifically talks about how capitalism uniquely alienates black people from the conception of the house and the conception of being, the counterplan proper. The top level I'm going for the permutations. I bet you probably already knew that from all the work I literally did above. They have no delineation of how they fiat. How do you remove the police? Their analysis only said that we have things like empirical analysis. We have specific statistics which specifically cites how things like federal regulations have been good. I.e. it said that government support for the mortgage market has actually helped increase rates of home ownership. Between the 1940s and the 1960s, the nation's home ownership actually increased from 44 to 62% through the FHA and the VA bill, through the G1 bill, etc., which means that we have empirical analysis. All their arguments are simply just about different types of movements, etc. Our argument is that the only way to ground these movements is via things like state action, because they've conceded the state inevitable claims, which mean that the home is central to the consumption of the cell. We both agree that housing is good. It's only a question of whether or not status challenges and demands on the state are compatible with things like black anarchism. Our arguments they are. Otherwise, the counterplan completely fails. We're the only material contingent goods that we can have. Good debate.
Good debate. I don't shake hands.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.